Hey everyone, before we get started on today's episode, I have a question. Do you have a dream or a goal of making a career out of your art? Well, there's a saying, a goal without a plan is actually nothing more than a wish. So I've got good news because applications are now open for my 6-month high-touch mentorship program called Studio Elite. And Studio Elite gives you that plan. It gives you the roadmap, it gives you the skills, and it gives you the community to get you to your goals faster. And I keep it intentionally small so that every artist gets personalized coaching, and the results have been astonishing. Just in the last year, one artist sold over 20 paintings in 1 month. Another artist had sold almost $100,000 in art in 1 year. One started an entire home goods line. One got a $10,000 commission, and many of them finally got accepted to exclusive art fairs, exhibitions, and galleries. So if this sounds like something that is on your bucket list, then I would say let's go for it. And if you're ready to make the big moves, I'd love to work with you in Studio Elite. You can find the application in the link in the show notes. Welcome back to the Honest Art Podcast. I am your host, Jodie King, and we are talking today about you and how important you are in your artist's identity to the art market or to the art world in general. So oftentimes what we think is that we are going to paint these paintings or maybe sculpture or do this work, and then that work will define our identity. But the truth is that if we don't know who the hell we are, we can't show up fully into that work at all. So your artist identity has everything to do with what you make, why you make it, and how it feels in your body once it's done. So in today's podcast, we're going to talk about what represents your artist identity, why it's so important, and if you don't feel like you are clear on your artist identity, how you can find that. So if you're ready, let's get messy. Okay, so let's get into this because there's a real risk here for us as artists if we're not clear on our artist identity. It's a loss of sales. It can be a loss of confidence, and that can be a really big one. And then what I often see with artists is it can be a lead to burnout because it's like we're trying to be all of these different things or maybe paint in all of these different ways, or we're just so not clear on our artist identity that it can lead us like spinning off in different directions that don't even serve us actually. So what is an artist's identity anyway? So it's a combo pack of various different things. One is it's your values and your beliefs. This plays a heavy role in almost every artist's work that is known because your values and your beliefs will come across in the stories that we tell about our art, right? And it's the story that connects people to the work. So your artist identity, your values and beliefs, that's where it really starts. And the next one is your lived experience. So, if you saw or you heard the podcast with Benny Bing, so much of the work that he does is because of his lived experience as a Black man and witnessing all of these strong women in his life. So that's the lived experience. If you're talking about my work is all about freedom and empowerment and play because my lived experience was that I didn't feel empowered. Play was not really, that wasn't, like as a child, play wasn't really that much of a thing for me. And I want to infuse that now into my whole life, right? My lived experience. And now that comes out in my art. And so that brings up the next thing that contributes to our artist identity, and that is our aesthetic voice. So our aesthetic voice comes across in our works because, like, let's say that you really love the ocean, right? There's an artist that is a friend of mine. She paints art that is in flow. And so the work that she creates has such a different aesthetic than any of the work that I create, because she's combining that lived experience and all of that, and it's coming across in the aesthetic. And then that brings us to the next one, which is all of those, like those signature marks that you make, all of the, like maybe it's the medium that you use, but it's your medium and it's your marks and it's those things that make your work your work. And when you infuse that with, the emotions that come with the stories, you infuse that with your lived experience, you infuse that with everything. Those are the things that make up our artist identity. And it just reminds me that it's not, our artist identity is not so much about what we paint. It's who we are and who we become and what comes through us. And then that's what we put on the canvas or whatever your medium might be. And the thing is that if you ever felt like your art wasn't a clear reflection of you, then this is actually an opportunity for you to say, okay, my identity is clearly wanting, it's kind of going, hello, I've got something to say. And if we are trying to paint or emulate other artists' work, then that identity never has an opportunity to come through. So we have to do the work, right? We have to show up and we have to do the work, and we have to not self-edit, because if we look at the work and we're like, that doesn't quite, I like it, but it doesn't quite feel like me, that's your identity going, listen to me, I've got something to say. And that's when we have to start to learn to trust our voice and those marks and believe that our lived experience is contributing to our artist identity. Now, some of the common artist identity blocks that I hear are, I don't have a signature style, so I must not have an identity. Not true. You just got to keep painting. So just because that style isn't quite there yet, it just means your identity is like, I'm getting there, I'm coming, I'm going to be there in just a second, if you'll just stay with it. So that's a block. Another block that I hear is I love other artists so much, and I'm always looking at their work, and I kind of feel like a copycat. And I think that's a really powerful thing to admit to ourselves, because it's kind of like the 12-step program. The first step is admitting you have a problem, right? And so when we can say, you know what, I think I'm just copying other artists' work. I don't know who I am as an artist. That goes back to not having a signature style. Those things are blocking, right? Those are blocking our artist identity. And then the last one I hear is, I haven't found my voice yet, so I must not be ready. So if you feel like you're not ready for an artist's identity, those are lies, I tell you. Because if you have been called to paint, there's something that needs to be birthed through you, or you are just being called to have this experience to expand yourself as well. And all of this goes into your artist identity. So it's really comes down to embracing all of the parts of ourselves, including emotions that we may have tapped down. It includes really looking at ourselves and saying, am I trying to commodify this? Am I just trying to paint to make money? Because when we do that, when we make it a commodity rather than truly art, then we can separate ourselves from our artist identity as well. So just taking the time to listen to yourself and really believing and trusting that whatever is coming through you on that given day is what is supposed to come through you on that given day. And if you've ever shown up to your canvas, maybe let's say on a Wednesday, you're like, I'm going to make some time to paint today. And you get in there and you're painting and it's a Wednesday, but then, Friday comes around and you feel like totally different. Maybe you don't feel like on Wednesday, if you were feeling playful and fun, maybe you got some really bad news Thursday, and now you're Friday, you're showing up to the canvas again, and you're like, I don't even know what to do with this, because I started like this and now I'm feeling like that. And that's okay, because our identity can fluctuate. It can certainly evolve over time, absolutely evolve over time. But what I don't want you to do is to think, well, this is my identity. Like for me, freedom, empowerment, and play. This is my identity. So unless I'm going to show up and paint like that, then I might as well not show up at all. And nothing could be further from the truth, because it's oftentimes when we are feeling a little off, or we are feeling uninspired or not knowing what to paint, it's when we get in there that we can sometimes have real breakthroughs that even surprise us and can give us more information about our artist identity. All right, now let's talk about something that might make you cringe. And that is, if you are an artist who wants to sell your art and really have, even if it's a side hustle or your full-time job, whatever it might be, your artist's identity is the foundation for your brand. Now, if any of you out there just cringed when I said brand, and you're like, I'm not a brand, my art's not a brand, that's not what this is about. Well, brand is just another way of saying your art is a reflection of who you are. And the clearer we can get on who we are and what we are bringing with our art, that's the foundation for the brand. And it is, when I tell you it's going to change everything when you get clear on your artist identity, it is going to change everything. It's going to change everything from how you decide which art fairs to apply to. It'll change everything from how you write your captions on Instagram. And if you're not on Instagram, it'll change how you start to show up on Instagram. It changes how you communicate when maybe you're sitting in an airplane and somebody next to you says, what do you do? It changes how you communicate. It changes how you show up. So your identity is your brand. And we should not shy away from that word as artists. Well, I mean, it's okay for every other industry to, understand they're a brand, but artists can't. And I just think that's BS. Now, I know that there are a lot of folks out there that I'd like to call art purists. And they believe that art should just be about art, and there should be no marketing, no capitalism, no commodification. None of that should be part of art. And while I fully agree that we shouldn't be creating art from that place, we shouldn't be in our studio or wherever we might be painting, we should never be thinking, is this what's going to sell? We should be painting from our brand identity, from our artist identity. I think it's totally fine for artists to get their bag. And in fact, I think it's more than fine, because artists are some of the most important contributors to a meaningful life in this world. We are so, so important. And so we're just supposed to be important, but we're not supposed to make money. The work that we're supposed to do is supposed to affect people and move them emotionally, but we should be poor? No, fuck no. We're not about that life at all around here. We can do both. It can be both and, not either or. So as I said, your identity is your brand. So let's de-shame that word just a little bit, because it doesn't mean selling out. Here's what it means. So when you have a strong artist identity, then that means that is going to set you apart in a very busy art world, right? So if, let's say that you're somebody who's like, you know what, I love neutral paintings, and I know designers like to buy neutral paintings. By the way, that is not 100% accurate at all, but that I often hear that with artists. They're like, well, I have a designer who's a friend of mine, and she said she likes neutral work, so I'm going to do neutral work. Well, that's totally fine. Do neutral work. I hope you sell the shit out of it. I hope you make a bunch of money. That's awesome. But it's not going to set you apart in as a recognizable artist in the art market. What will set you apart in the art market is understanding your artist's identity and bringing that into your work. Now, can you still do neutral work and have your brand identity? Absolutely. But what is it that you can bring to it? Is it your marks that you think are not that important, but they are? They look so cool on that work? Then do that. But you've got to be able to be confident in your artist's identity. So that's why we're talking about this, right? I'm going to tell you in just a minute how you can do that. The other thing about understanding your artist's identity is it contributes to your story. People buy art, but they buy the story associated with the art. And that it's that story that makes them connect to the message of the art. So if you're an artist who is just not clear on your artist's identity, it's going to make it so difficult for you to be able to connect the painting with the collector because you're not sure about what it is. And that doesn't mean you always have to be sure when you're painting it. You guys have maybe heard me say this many times. I often am just in the middle of painting something and I don't know what it's about. All I'm trying to do is be really, really present. I'm working really hard to stay in the flow and just making that next right move, grabbing that paint, grabbing maybe it's a marking tool, whatever it might be. I'm just trying to do, stay in that. Now, sometimes at the end of the painting, I can step back and I'll know because what I was experiencing in my body, is on the painting, and I can have a story around what that is. But sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm just like, what's the saying? I'm not here for a long time. I'm just here for a good time. Sometimes it's just that. And so that can take me a minute to figure out what the painting is about. But that doesn't mean that I'm not clear on my artist identity. I know who I am. So I'm going to be able to tap into that so that I can understand the story of the art even more. And then I'm able to convey that to the collector. Now, on the flip side of that is that when your brand feels uncertain, everything else feels a little shaky. It's like our business confidence, not to mention our personal confidence, it can tend to crumble. And these are some of the things that I used to say to myself, and maybe you can relate to them. These are the things that I used to say that really kind of sabotaged my confidence when it came to my artist identity. The first one is that I didn't go to art school. And therefore, if I didn't go to art school, then clearly everyone else must know more than I know. And it just buckled my knees for a while until I started I started kind of dismantling that a little bit. It was actually another artist friend who I was talking to that helped me with this. She had gone to art school. She had got a degree in art, and she kept encouraging me to apply to these shows and apply to different things. And I just would say, I can't. It's my work's not there. My work's not good enough. And she's like, "What's your deal, Jodie?" And I said, frankly, I just didn't go to art school. And she goes, "That's what this is? That's what this is about?" And I go, well, yeah, I mean, I was really choked up about it. And she assured me, now, of course, it's one person's opinion, but she assured me as someone who had gone to art school that, that it was fine, that I was good enough at least to at least apply to these art fairs and these shows. So don't let that stop you. The other one is that I did was I'm self-taught, so I can't charge that much. I don't know if any of you have that, just that kind of idea of like, well, if I had gone to art school and I have a fancy degree, then I would be able to charge more for my work. Not true. Absolutely not true. Some of my favorite art out there is done by people who are self-taught. And this goes back to, who said the quote? Was it Picasso? I feel like we give Picasso all the quotes. he and Einstein, and I don't think they said half of them. But it was learn the rules so you can break them like a pro. What I find is sometimes people who have gone to art school, they are so entrenched in the rules that they lack a sense of freedom in their art because they're concentrating too much on what's right and what's wrong. So if you feel like, I'm self-taught, I can't charge enough or charge more for my work, just a bunch of BS. Don't lean into that one. Okay, and here's the last one I did. My little inner saboteur for my artist identity was I felt like if I put myself out there and really kind of claim this, then whoever they are, people will find out that I don't really know what I'm doing. Have you ever had that? It's like it's all well and good if I am, painting at home and I'm enjoying it and I'm developing and I'm painting a little bit more and a little bit more. But this is all in like the privacy of my home and it's my safe space, right? But if you are feeling like that, but then there's this nudge within you, any kind of nudge, small nudge, big nudge, whatever it might be. But if there's a nudge to kind of put yourself out there and see what kind of response that you'll get, even though you're scared that it's going to be negative, just know that nobody knows what they're doing, okay? So I feel like some of my favorite artists, they've been painting 20 years, 10 years, 30 years, however long it might be. And the ones that say, I'm still trying to figure this out, those are my heroes, right? Because we're all still trying to figure this out. So if you're worried that you can't put yourself out there or you can't stand on your artist identity because you're afraid people will find out you're a fraud, all of that BS. So all of those I have done, and thankfully I got over them. Okay, guys, real quick, while I've got to tell you about something really, really exciting, and that is the Honest Art Society. The Honest Art Society is my membership group where I'm able to finally offer artists all of the things that you've been asking for. So you get monthly training, you get coaching calls, you get monthly art critiques, there are guest speakers, there is studio hour where we'll paint together, and also you get exclusive discounts and offers, and you get to hear about things that happen first. All for only $47 a month. So I hope you will join me in this group with amazing artists as well. So go to the link in the show notes to find out more about the Honest Art Society. Okay, so let's get into how can you find your artist identity, because that's the real magic, right? Is you owning that. So good news, bad news. For those of you who are really wanting to overthink this, that's not where we go. That's not how we find our artist identity. We find our artist identity through action. It's when we show up consistently. It's when we make the work, and then through time, and when I'm saying time, you guys, I'm not talking about 5 years, but through time, it's like our artist identity leaves these breadcrumbs for us to find. And we show up consistently, we make the art, and then there's that breadcrumb and that breadcrumb and that breadcrumb. And eventually all of those breadcrumbs lead us to ourselves. Because that's the thing is like, you know, when we were talking about some of the things that we do, our inner saboteur, we feel like the identity is like out there, but it's in here. So those little breadcrumbs, what they're doing is they're leading us to our artistic voice, and they're leading us to our artistic identity. But we've got to be willing to look for those breadcrumbs as well. So as we're looking, we're doing the work, and we're showing up, and we are following the breadcrumbs. What we often have a tendency to do is like we get to the end of that trail, and we kind of find our voice. Not kind of. We find our voice. We find our signature. And sometimes that voice is even a surprise to us. Sometimes we find we're kind of pissed off, right? Sometimes we find that you've got a lot to say about social issues. Sometimes we find that we have this longing for peace, and we didn't really give it the attention that it deserves. So sometimes we find that our artist identity is more than we anticipated. And for those of us who have been told to shrink, and for those of us who have been told to quiet that voice, for those of us who have been told to play smaller, what we can often do is we try to soften the edges of that artist identity. We don't want to be too, jagged, right? We want to appeal to more people, but it never works like that, right? I've said that, trying to appeal to everybody is going to appeal to nobody. And so if you water yourself down so that you feel like you can be more appealing to the art market, it's going to be like watering down tequila. Like people who water down tequila and they're like, this party sucks, right? As a tequila fan, it's never something you want to do. But also in our art, don't try to soften those edges. Don't try to make yourself smaller. If you want to say fuck, say fuck. If you want to, speak your mind on social issues that you feel really passionate about, then do that. Because what's going to happen is you are going to bloom, right? You are going to shine. And then the people that are tuned into that same frequency, they are going to come to you. They're going to see that because you're not like everybody else. You're standing on your artist identity, and it's going to make all the difference. Okay, now, as I've told you guys before, it's the story that sells the art, but I don't want you to feel like you have to sell out. I'm working with a couple of artists right now in Studio Elite, and they've got some really powerful stories, very, very powerful stories. And you may have a really powerful story as well. And there's parts of your story that you just don't feel safe talking about, that it's not going to be part of the story that you want the world to know, and that is 100,000,000% okay. I have the exact same thing. We don't ever want our trauma to be something that we're kind of marketing, right? Because that feels icky. But at the same time, pretending like our work is all, rainbows and butterflies, that can also be icky because there's a disconnect there no matter what. The idea is if you are using your art and as part of your brand identity is for your own healing and maybe for the healing of others, then you get to decide which parts of that story you want to tell. I was being interviewed. This was probably 2 years ago. I was being interviewed, and the interviewer said, Is there anything that's off limits that you don't want to talk about? And I'm like, I usually share everything. Too much. But there were a few things that were off limits and that I said, I'm not going to talk about this. And so you just need to know that as part of your artist identity, you get to decide. You get to feel empowered by your story. And if part of your story is trauma, you get to decide which part of your story you're going to tell. Okay, just a few closing thoughts. Number one, you are allowed to take up space. And I just want to say that one more time. Okay. Not only are you allowed to take up space, but your art is allowed to take up space. And it's when you do that, it's when you embrace that, that's when people look at you and your art because they buy the artist as much as the art. That's when people look at it and go, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired by this. I'm so inspired by this work, by this journey, or whatever it might be. So know that you and your art are not only allowed to take up space, you should take up space. Those are the people, that's the art that's going to really change the world. And within that, I just want to say that I hope you keep honoring your identity as it morphs, as it changes, as you evolve, and you don't let the world try to edit that out of you, right? Your identity should be so strong, and you should honor that. I've recently been doing some work, like inner work. I do a lot of meditations and stuff. And one of the things that I uncovered was that I had some shame around something that I didn't even know I had shame around. And when I realized it, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's really kind of ridiculous that I've got shame around that, then that just opened something up for me, and it allowed me to honor my journey, which is going to honor myself. And because I'm an artist, that is going to honor my artistic journey. So I want to encourage you in that. And finally, here's what I really want you to ask yourself. I want you to ask yourself, how is my identity showing up in my work? Okay, I'm going to say that one more time. Please ask yourself, how is my identity showing up in my work? Because if you ask yourself that, and you can answer it, and you can say, oh, it's showing up here, and it's showing up in that fluorescent, and it's showing up in what I like to paint. It's, and you can really identify that, then that's amazing. And there's no better feeling than that. But if you ask yourself, how is my identity showing up in my work? And the answer is, I don't know. That's okay too. That's totally okay. But that's the calling, right? The calling now is to say, okay, what am I suppressing? Where am I afraid to be too loud? Where do I feel like I need to play smaller? And lean into those places and make yourself bigger, make yourself louder, and let yourself be seen. So I hope this helps. I believe in you, and I believe in your artist identity, and I know that this is the thing that can make the difference between more sales, more fun, and helping to alleviate burnout. So until next time, take good care of yourselves and each other. Peace out. Big announcement around here. I am announcing my final 2 workshops of 2025. One is in Santa Fe, New Mexico in July, and the other is here in Austin, Texas in October. And I know taking a workshop can feel vulnerable, it can feel scary, but it is truly the fastest way to level up your art. Plus, we just have a ball. So whether you are a beginner or you are a seasoned artist, this workshop will transform your art and leave you feeling like such a badass, knowing that you've got the skills to not only make honest art, but fine art. So one word of caution, if you're interested in joining me, and I hope you will, know that every workshop I have offered in the last 5 years has sold out within days. So I would love to paint with you, and if you'd like to learn more, head to the link in the show notes.